Hey everyone, Roy Shepherd here, and today I want to ask you, if your life depended on it, would you know how to pick a lock? Lock picking is a skill that is usually associated with criminals, but when we, in these rare times, forget our keys or they no longer work on our car doors or our home doors, and we need to invite a locksmith to help us, we realize how important this skill can be. Now, during and after a crisis, the value of the skill bumps up tremendously. It becomes essential, especially when you need to find food or crucial equipment that is locked behind a locked door or a padlock. In this video, we're going to take a look at the tumbler lock, which is the most used lock in the United States. It is used for doors, padlocks, lockers, and many other places. Now, it's really important to understand how the lock works in order for us to break it. It's very simple. It has 6 small pins inside of it, inside of the mechanism, that are divided into 2. Between each pin, the space, the broken area, is in different height. So in fact, it stops the cylinder to move. The pins stop the cylinders to move. They are held in place with small springs. Now, a key has some ridges on it that bump each one of the pins into the right location, so all the spaces are aligned with the cylinder, allowing the key to turn and thus open the lock. A small disclaimer: this skill is extremely important when trying to save life in case of an emergency, but in any other situation, do not use this skill. It is considered a criminal activity to do it in any other situation. Now we're going to use 2 lock picking tools, the lock pick and the tension wrench. The tension wrench is also called an L wrench because of its shape, and they're going to mimic the function of the key. One is to turn the cylinder to its side, and the other to push the pins into the right location. Now we'll go over how to do it. Now, the way we use this to open a pin tumbler lock is very simple. First, you take the lock and you place the tension wrench all the way through the bottom side, where there is a small hook shape. You place the tension wrench all the way in. Then you place moderate pressure on the tension wrench to the side that it moves freely, about 5 to 10 degrees. Make sure to not use too much force, which would not allow you to use the lockpick in a good way. Then place the lockpick all the way into the lock and try to bump very gently each one of the pins to rest in place. Because of the angle that we created with the tension wrench, the pins will stop and rest just where their space is going to be. After pushing each one of the 5 or 6 pins, the lock will simply open. A small note: this requires a lot of sensitivity and practice. So at first it's going to be really rough and you'll have a hard time to find the correct pressure to give each one of the pins and the tension wrench. So practice, practice, practice. The more you do it, the more sensitive you'll become, and you'll feel when each one of the pins is in place. Most locks are created randomly. The place where the pins are broken are created randomly by a machine. But after practicing the skill for many years, there are a couple of tricks that would make this a lot easier. Or actually, there are few things we need to notice to not make this a lot harder. The first one, sometimes there are what I call dummy pins, which means that the way they rest originally is already on the right location. So moving them in a bit will jam the lock. Sometimes a lock may have, 3 or even 4 dummy pins. So you have to be really careful, and when you use the lockpick, to hear the small, very light click when the pins fall into place. And if they don't, it might be a dummy pin. Now, the second thing is, some locks are so aligned that most of the pins are so straight that placing the lockpick into the mechanism already opens them. And any little cleverness trying to move even one of the pins may jam it. So first try to be very gentle and always remember, all you need to do is just turn the tension wrench and the lock would open. So just remember, some of the locks are built like that. Some of the locks are made of really soft metal, like nickel, for example. And when you use the tension wrench and a lockpick, the metal inside starts to bend, and it pretty much destroys the lock. Usually they are very cheap knockoff, knockoff Chinese locks. And what you need to do in case you find such a lock is use 2 wrenches, place them on the hinges, and apply pressure toward the inside. This will snap the lock after a few seconds. If push comes to shove and you really have to open a lock quickly and noise is not a problem, you can use one of the alternative methods. For example, you can use a hammer and just hit the lock very strongly. You can use either explosives or a shotgun with breaching shells to shoot the lock or the hinges of a door to break it. But keep in mind that these ways are very loud. They will be heard not only in the house itself that you're trying to breach, but for miles and miles around you. So just if you do use one of these methods, make sure that it's appropriate. And you have, of course, cover and enough manpower to secure the area. Lockpicking is a very useful skill if we are in a bind in our normal days, but essential skill during and after a catastrophe situation. It may be the difference between surviving and not if the tools and the food that you need is locked behind a lock. This skill requires a lot of practice and a lot of finesse, especially more modern locks that have double locks, double pins, or magnetic or electromagnetic locking mechanism. They require advanced tools and more techniques to be used. So start practicing now that you have the chance. Now it's your turn. Have you ever been locked out or in anywhere? Have you ever successfully lockpicked a lock, and you have some tips and techniques that you'd like to share with us? Leave a comment, and I love reading everything you write. Next, there has been many incidents of active shooter scenarios and rampages in the street, right in the heart of America. So in the next series, we'll focus on those events, how to avoid and survive them in case that worst comes to worst and you're stuck in one of them. I can't wait to share all of this with you. So until then, Stay safe.